Welcome back, everybody. So, one thing I like to do with my cars is I like to gather information on them and kind of look into them. This is going to be more nerd level information for anybody who's interested in E23s. Like, I've gone as far as I ordered a report for that Mustang over there. That is one of 21 in its original color. Granted, it's painted with Rust-Oleum. The other thing I know is this MG is in a one model year only color. So I like to see unusual things about my project cars and figure out kind of how unusual they are, which is the case with this one. So first here we've got your standard US spec repair manual. This is kind of indispensable. I mean, most of the stuff in here does not apply specifically to 745i for US spec cars, but it gives you information on things like transmission, brakes. Some of the engine stuff crosses over, some of it doesn't. But it's nice to be able to get stuff figured out. All the body stuff will transfer over to the 745i, so you can figure out, positioning of the badges on the back, how to get off the grills, things like that. These are relatively common. Luckily, I found somebody selling this one local to me. You can find them online too. I know there's places that you can either buy a PDF version of it. I found another source that has a PDF version of the European manual, so I look at that one every once in a while too. These are all your standard US spec manuals. This one's interesting because it's an early one. Earlier cars had a slightly different interior, so they got a different center console here. Seats are a little bit different. They're a little bit more pillowy. These stripes in the middle don't go all the way up to the top, so they got more of a rounded top on them. But these are just nice to have for reference material. Look in them. They also had earlier gauge clusters. I think that was up until 81 they had that style gauge cluster. But you can see that you'll notice through this that all of these US manuals have leather in them. And then when we get over to the European ones over here, you'll notice that pretty much they all show cloth, except for this picture. This is a European picture where they have the cloth in here. But it's interesting, gives you references on things. This is another kind of earlier one, so this is 81, 82 model year. It's nice because it gives you information on, what the original finishes would look like on stuff. Nice to have everything. Here's the later interior that most of the cars have. So again, you can see leather seats. They have the later center console. This pleating goes all the way up to the top on the later style seats. Here's your later instrument cluster. Later dashboard. Almost every single US spec car had, not every single one, but it was fairly common to have automatic air conditioning. Down here you can kind of see a little bit of a peaking picture where it had the manual AC. This style manual AC, I think, only went up until 83 or maybe 84. But again, these are just common things, pretty nice to have. Some of these, I think this one's a full line, so you got your 3 series, your 7 series, there's 5 series in here. Nice because it has a little bit about the M1 on the back. And again, these are just all your quick little brochures. Not really too much in them. This one shows a little bit of the L7 in it, which was, I don't know if it was 87 only or 86 and 87. Can't remember for sure on that one. But it also has, 6 series, 5 series, 7 series. There's your L7 again. Another interesting thing about the US L7s is they all had airbags on them. Airbags started to be optional in Europe in the mid to early 80s, but they were all optional on the 7 series. And then when you got the L7 in the US, they all came standard. This is another one from 82, but this is your colors. So a lot of these colors we didn't actually get in the US. I don't have a full list of what we got in the US, but I know we didn't get most of these greens. We definitely got the blues, definitely got the silvers. This is my first car. Since this is 82, I think it is, it doesn't have all the different colors in here. But there's a wide range of colors available on the 7 series. And there's a lot of stuff that we didn't get interior-wise in the US. So again, US, you didn't get any sort of fabric. That wasn't even an option. You got standard leather on all your cars. Again, we had to pick from leather colors. So they didn't offer greens here. I think you basically had Pacific, cherry, black, and there might have been one, I think this parchment color was one of them too. This is just another thing here showing you, what they recommend. So 7 series, these are the interiors and color combinations that they recommend. So if you choose, my car's 045, you had 130 for your 728s. If you had a 732 to a 745i, you got 0097 interior colors. If you had the 6 series, you got 118, 108 or whatever. Moving down the line here. So this is where we get into the European stuff. So unfortunately, I can't really read German, so I use Google Translate a lot for this. But these brochures are interesting because you will see some European options that they didn't offer here. I do know they show this picture a lot in the US spec brochures, but they were experimenting with a V8 version and a V12 version. This is a picture of the turbocharged version for the 745i. This is more information on the turbocharged stuff. But in the US one, they leave these two brochures out. Again, on this picture here, you have a European spec car, so you have European bumpers. You got your windshield or your headlight washer wipers. Here's a picture of a 745 engine. So these just little subtle nuances and differences between the US and the European brochures. Trying to find the interior portion here. So here's where we get into the interior. Again, these are all cloth seats in here. So pretty much every US manual has leather pictures of leather wherever they can. And then you have all your options here. So 5-speed manual, heated power mirrors on the passenger side. Here's your no AC heating controls. Oddly, this car had heated seats but no air conditioning. That's a basic radio. And then here's a picture of the back seat, which you may notice is a little odd looking compared to the US picture of the back seat. So again, these are fabric seats, but these two switches here mean that these are power reclining rear seats. So you could get power reclining rear seats across the range. So you could get it with fabric, you could get it with standard leather, you could get it with the executive interior, which is hand-stitched buffalo leather. Oddly, you could not get it on the L7 or the Highline interior. Some more stuff that they had as options here. So you had car phone, you had an underseat air conditioner or underseat fire extinguisher, power seats you could get in the US, but this center console here in this brown, and this over here in this brown, this is an executive interior. So here's your cruise control, your sport steering wheel, your headlight washers, glass sunroof. So we did not get a glass sunroof option in the US, but there is a section in the US repair manual that tells dealerships how to install that as a dealer installed option. So none of the cars came to the US from the factory with a glass sunroof, but you could get a dealer installed option on it. Seeing what else is interesting in this one. Unfortunately, like I said, I can't read German, so I kind of have to translate a lot of this stuff on my phone. This gives you all your different specs of everything in the back here. Again, I know I've translated a lot of it. I can't remember most of it off the top of my head. These are interesting here. So side by side in the US, at the end of the model run, we had the L7, which I believe there are only supposed to be 1,500 of them built. In Europe, earlier than the US, they offered what they call the Highline interior, which they offered on the 735i and the 745i. So these interiors and the L7 and the Highline, they look really nice when they are well taken care of. But unfortunately, the leather in these things, best way to put it, is they aged like milk. So a lot of the ones that you see now that have been left outside for any period of time, the seats are all cracked. The leather on the dashboard is cracked and torn up. But again, the seats on these and the door panels and the armrests were all hand stitched. This just gives you a little bit more information about the L7 version of the US spec L7, which would be the equivalent of a 735i Highline. I can't remember for sure if they offered multiple colors of this. I think on the L7 in the US they only offered this, they call it silver leather, which is almost white with a gray hand-stitched leather dashboard. So again, the common problem is they're left out in the sun and this stitching up here splits, and these interiors do not look good after a long period of time. And then onto the European version of it. So here, you say, but earlier you said that this reclining rear seat was not allowed on the Highline or the L7. So this is a picture of a Highline interior with the, I believe they called this oyster interior, I'm not entirely sure. But this is a Highline interior with a reclining rear seat. This translates to basically say that reclining rear seat is not an option on the L7. I can't remember exactly what it translates to, but it comes out and says that the reclining rear seat is not an option at all on the L7 or the Highline. So apparently they made one car with it, but they didn't offer it in series production. And I can tell you that if you get a 745i Highline, which they offered the 745i as a Highline, they only made 392 of those. And I believe they were all made in one run. So this is a combination brochure. I got this out of the UK. So this is the Executive and the Highline. The Executive interior is really a nice interior. So the way to tell if it's an Executive interior is they're either going to have a brown interior called Nutria, or they're going to have a darker color that's charcoal colored that's called anthracite. The key thing to tell if it is a Highline is they all have burl wood. So you'll not find burl wood on one that is not a Highline. The other way to tell if it has the buffalo leather interior, because you could option the buffalo leather, any non-executive package. I don't know why you would, but some people did. So if you have perforated leather here, that's the buffalo leather. Again, this stuff held up a little bit better than the Highline interiors, but a lot of these faded, and then once they started to dry out, they faded really bad. This Nutria turns almost a light tan color when it's really dry, but it can be brought back. But once you start seeing it dry out enough, these perforations here start to split and rip. If you had a 735i, you could get an Executive with a manual transmission. 745i's were all automatic transmission. Looking for, so here's your reclining rear seat and the Executive. This was an option. This one also has a cell phone built into it that they hand stitched leather around the cell phone. So again, here's your hand stitched leather cell phone, or car phone, I guess is the best way to put it. This is just another further built-in brochure here, giving some more nice pictures of this really nice interior. Here's your Highline, your Executive. Another Highline interior here. I'm gonna try to see if I can find another picture up here that I forgot to show off. So back towards the middle of this one somewhere, I think. Nope. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find it now, but there was another interesting thing on the Executive interiors. Maybe it's in here. Nope, that's the Highline one. On the Executive interiors, power windows were still an option. And one of these brochures I just looked at had a whole bunch of options in it, which of course I can't find now. It's right here. So you can see the burlwood trim right here on there. Try to get that glare off of there. So you can see the burlwood trim here. This is the Nutria Buffalo interior, but you still had manual crank windows on there. It's really, really unusual options combinations were allowed. This one here, you can see it says 745i on it. I'm going to tease you guys and get to this one a little bit later, but this is what a lot of people consider this kind of a Holy Grail brochure. It's for a very rare model that not a lot were made of. Let's get to that. And now specifically about my car. So I found and bought a German brochure list, or German language options list for the 7 Series. So this is interesting because this list right here tells you everything that was standard on the 7 Series. So here's your 728, 732, 735, 745IA. Every black dot or black dot with a number in it was optional. Every white dot was something that was standard on that model. Obviously, if it's missing a dot, it's not allowed on there. And I went through and I converted it to English. Didn't really print out right, but you can see This first section here is all radios. So all radios were optional across the whole board of 7 Series. Until you got into the executives, then when you optioned the executive interior, you got the Becker Mexico. Then you also had automatic antenna instead of a manual antenna. So if you optioned one of your base mono radios, so these are mono channel, so they only had 2-channel speakers. And then you had your stereo ones, so that's where you got 4 speakers there. And then you get down here, so the first standard feature that a 745 high has is the automatic transmission, and then you have ABS, and then you have level control for the rear axle, which is your SLS suspension. And then the next one you have is these 14-inch aluminum wheels instead of steel wheels. Central locking was standard. Driver door mirror with door lock heating was standard on the 745i. So one of the options that mine has is this passenger mirror with heating and electric controls. So if you didn't option this, you would have just had a standard non-power mirror on there. And then nothing else standard on here. Toolbox large version, including luggage compartment. So on the 728i's, you had a smaller little toolbox built into the trunk lid. On everything else, you had a larger full trunk liner on the trunk lid with a larger toolbox built into it. So glove compartment lock was also standard. Low front seats with sunroof. So if you had a sunroof, it was standard on there. Unless I messed up this translation for that one, that's possible. 745i's all had rear headrests, fog lights, and then computer control. So this is your onboard computer, and then a larger battery with a larger amp alternator. These are just kind of your references here. But going back, so my car did not have a radio in it. My car did not have any of this except for what was standard on here. Unfortunately, it didn't have the sport wheel because that was cool. Had all of this that was standard on here, so TRX wheels are not on my car. First option that my car has is metallic paint. So I also had passenger mirror with heating was the other option. And then, where is it? So, somewhere down here, unless I lost the page. So I also had a sunroof optioned on mine. I don't remember exactly where it is on the options list. I know where it is on here. So right down here, I think. So this is your manual sunroof, and this is your electric sunroof. This right here, so this is the full price list. Unfortunately, this is a year after mine, so this is from '85. I actually waited 3 months for this to get shipped to me. I ordered it in October. I got it 2 days ago. The base price for a 745 automatic was 62,543 Deutschmarks in 1985, or 71,300 Deutschmarks with the 14% VAT added into it. So I went through and I kind of calculated it out to explain why the gray market, excuse my horrible handwriting on here, but the gray market was kind of booming in the mid 80s. So I don't know for sure if you had to pay VAT on these when you ordered them in Germany or not, but you can see here, my car, as it was optioned, the sunroof would have been a 1,650 Deutschmark option, metallic paint 1,300 Deutschmarks. Forgot one of the other options to mention is mine had green glass as an option. That's 225 Deutschmarks, and the passenger side mirror is 225 Deutschmarks. That roughly translates to 26,030 US dollars without VAT, or 29,700 US dollars with VAT. The US spec 735i, the MSRP was $37,175. And then I just did a 745 executive with no extra additional options on it for fun. So 745i executive, which is arguably much better option than you would get a US spec 735i, that roughly came out to be 36,200 US dollars with a 14% VAT on it. If you didn't have to pay the VAT, it was 31,750 US dollars. So this is why people went over to Germany, got out the little options list here, ordered the car that they wanted. They went through with the price list, figured out how much it was going to cost them, and then they would order them, ship them to the US, go through the federalization process, which sometimes they did a lot of stuff to it, other times they didn't. And then there's this. You might be asking yourself, why did I say that this was the Holy Grail of brochures? So you can see it just says 745i at the top. If we go to the back of this, it says, BMW AG, West Germany, blah, blah, blah. We go over here, BMW South Africa. I bought this brochure probably 20 years ago as a very dorky early 20-something. This is a South African 745i brochure. If you don't know what the South African 745i is, essentially it is a 7 Series with an M88 in it, which is the same engine they had in the M5 and M6 of that day. All because you could not get a turbocharger to fit with right-hand drive. All the South African 745i's came with this style interior, which was similar to the Highline interior. They did not have a contrasting dashboard for some reason. They did not have the plastic surround around the shifter. So they had a slightly different center console on all of them. They had different dashboards. They still had hand-stitched leather. You had 3 options of interior, which was this tan. You had Pacific, which was blue, and then I can't remember the last one, actually, surprisingly. But you can see the shifter surround here is a little bit different. Your automatic transmission selector is moved. They had an M speedometer in them. You also had an option of a close ratio dog leg 5-speed, which they only made 17 of those. There's still some, I haven't heard reliable numbers on how many of these they made. The general consensus is they only made 209 of them. They were supposed to make 249 of them to go touring car racing with them in South Africa. I don't know if they made 249 or if they just said they did. But here is your M88 engine that they had in the South African 745i. I believe this car right here, this specific car, was recently sold or purchased or donated to the BMW museum over in Munich. This one I think is one of the 5-speed ones. I can't remember for sure. There are not many of these brochures out there. This is just your full range brochure specific to South Africa. But yeah, so I like to educate myself on these cars as much as I possibly can. I went a little bit overboard with my hand done calculations and probably my translating the options list just so I could figure out what my car had and what my car didn't. Yeah, that's my collection of brochures. Hope you guys kind of found this a little bit interesting. I know it's going to be boring for a lot of you, but if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know. I'll try to answer your question. And then again, if you found this really interesting, remember to like, share, and subscribe. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.